Dear student, the topic of this video is anterior pituitary and growth hormone. Learning objective. At the end of this session, the student will be able to describe functional anatomy of pituitary gland, enumerate the hormones released from anterior pituitary, describe structure, synthesis and secretion, metabolism, actions, mechanism of actions of growth hormone, explain functions of somatomedin, describe regulation of growth hormone secretion, correlate gigantism and acromegaly, explain physiology of growth and catch-up growth. Pituitary gland is situated at the base of the brain in sella turcica, a small cavity of sphenoid bone. So we can see from this picture that this is the base of the brain. So this is a pituitary gland here. We can see. So this is a pituitary gland, and we can find different parts of the brain. So this is the corpus callosum, and then this is the thalamus. This part is the third ventricle, then it is the pons, medulla, cerebellum. So this gives a whole picture of the brain, and this is the base of the brain where the pituitary gland is located at the sella turcica of the sphenoid bone. So this bone is a sphenoid bone. So there is a depression on this bone that is known as the sella turcica. So this is the sphenoid bone, and this is a depression. So this is a depression where actually the pituitary gland is located. So it is situated at the base of the brain at sella turcica, small cavity on the sphenoid bone. Now it consists of two lobes, anterior lobe and the posterior lobe. So this is the anterior lobe of the pituitary, and this is the posterior lobe of the pituitary. And there is intermediate lobe of pituitary present in many species, but in human beings it is rudimentary. Anterior and posterior lobes of pituitary are two separate and distinct glands. The anterior lobe of pituitary is rich in various endocrine cells. Hence, anterior pituitary is called adenohypophysis. Posterior pituitary contains neurons that secrete hormones. Hence, posterior pituitary is called neurohypophysis. So, posterior pituitary is the neurohypophysis and anterior pituitary is the adenohypophysis. Now, development or embryology. Embryologically, anterior and posterior pituitaries develop from different sources. Anterior pituitary, it develops as an evagination from Rathke's pouch. So this is the roof of the stomatodium from where this Rathke's pouch is taking origin. It will give rise to the anterior pituitary. Whereas the posterior pituitary, it develops as a part of the hypothalamus. So this is the diencephalon from where the hypothalamus develops. So this is, so after certain period they will merge together and form the whole pituitary consisting of the anterior pituitary or adenohypophysis and the posterior pituitary, that is a neurohypophysis. So here is another view where we can see that this is the stomodium. From roof of the stomodium the anterior lobe is originating, whereas this is the diencephalon, this is a third ventricle, and the hypothalamus which is generating the posterior lobe. This is another view. We can see that this is a posterior pituitary which is attached to the brain with the help of the infundibular stalk, and this is the third ventricle, hypothalamus. Here we are getting the optic chiasma here on one side and the mammillary body on the other side. And this is the anterior pituitary which has different parts like pars tuberalis with which it is attached with the brain, and the pars intermedia and pars distalis. This pars intermedia is rudimentary in human, and this in infundibular stalk and pars tuberalis, they will form the pituitary stalk. So this is the much mature picture. So we can see here, this is a pituitary stalk, and this part is the anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary. This is the optic chiasma and the third ventricle and the hypothalamus. So this is the position of the pituitary in relation with the brain matter. We can see here. So this is the position of the pituitary gland. This is the optic chiasma, and here is the corpus callosum, and behind it we have the hypothalamus, thalamus, and this is our pons medulla and the cerebellum. Now, blood supply of pituitary gland. Blood supply to pituitary is achieved by means of superior and inferior hypophyseal arteries. So this is a superior hypophyseal artery, and this one is the inferior hypophyseal artery. Superior hypophyseal artery terminates in rich capillary network in the median eminence. So this is the median eminence of the hypothalamus, where it will form the capillary plexus, which is denoted as the primary plexus. From this capillary plexus, long hypophyseal portal vessels arise and descends down the pituitary stalk to end in capillaries in the anterior lobe. So one type of capillary is here. So from them, long vessels, they will come down and they will end again into another type of capillary. So capillary, that is a primary capillary plexus, it is again ending into the secondary capillary plexus at the level of anterior pituitary. So that's why it is known as the hypophyseal portal circulation, as the major hypophyseal vessels start and end with capillaries. This arrangement is called the hypophyseal portal circulation. The inferior hypophyseal artery, it supplies blood to the posterior lobe. Inferior hypophyseal artery, it supplies blood to the posterior lobe, from where short hypophyseal portal vessels arise and terminate locally. The anterior pituitary, it contains huge number of endocrine cells. These endocrine cells contain numerous granules that store hormones. These hormones are secreted by exocytosis of this granule. So via exocytosis, these hormones are secreted, and they will readily enter, immediately they will enter into the circulation through the capillaries. And these capillaries in the pituitary, they have a speciality. They are the sinusoidal capillaries. So they have huge number of fenestrations or pores. So after exocytosis, these hormones, they will readily enter into the circulation. Now, what are the different types of cells in the pituitary, cellular composition of the gland? If we look into that, we will see that 50% of the cells are somatotrophs that secrete the growth hormone. They are located at the lateral wing of the anterior pituitary. So these are the somatotrophs that secrete the growth hormone. After that, we have the 15 to 20% of the cell which are the lactotrophs that secrete the prolactin hormone, which are located at the posteromedial and posterolateral part of the anterior pituitary. Next type of cell is the corticotroph, 15 to 20%. They secrete ACTH and they are located at the central wing, that is the central portion of the anterior pituitary. 5% of the cells are the thyrotrophs that secrete TSH. They are located at the anteromedial portion of this anterior pituitary. And 10% of these cells are the gonadotrophs that secrete FSH and LH, which are located at the pars distalis and pars tuberalis. The cell types of anterior pituitary are divided into two broad categories, chromophore cells and chromophilic cells. We can see here Some are the chromophore cells and some are the chromophilic cells. The chromophilic cells are subdivided into acidophilic cells and the basophilic cells. Acidophilic cells are the cells that stain with acidic dyes, and basophilic are the cells that stain with the basic dyes. So acidophilic cells, they will give a red color, that is a staining will be red. Basophilic cells, they will give a purple color. So we have 5 cell types. Among them, the somatotrophs and lactotrophs, they are the acidophilic. So red type of color, they will stain, they will take. So only out of these 5 cell types, only 2 cell types are acidophilic. That is the somatotrophs that secretes the growth hormone and the lactotroph that secretes the prolactin. Rest of the other cells, that is the thyrotroph, gonadotrophs and corticotrophs, they are the basophilic cells. Chromophobic cells are usually less active and therefore have few secretory granules. So this figure gives us an idea about the harmony between the hypothalamus, pituitary and the target organs of these hormones. So we know different types of cells present in the anterior pituitary. It may be the somatotroph that secretes the growth hormone. It may be the lactotroph that secretes the prolactin, corticotroph that secretes ACTH, thyrotrophs that secrete TSH, gonadotrophs that secrete LH and FSH. All of them, they have their corresponding releasing or inhibiting factors that is released from the hypothalamus. For example, the corticotropin releasing factor that is released from the hypothalamus, it will stimulate the anterior pituitary. Thyrotropin releasing hormone will stimulate the thyrotrophs. GnRH or gonadotropin releasing hormone, the gonadotrophs, and growth hormone releasing hormone that will stimulate the somatotrophs. Now what about the lactotrophs? There will be release of dopamine from the hypothalamus, and it is seen that this dopamine is actually inhibitory on the lactotrophs. So this is the figure, shows the relationship between the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary and the target organs. So there is a harmony in between them. So we know that there will be releasing hormone like TRH or thyroid releasing hormone, which will act on the thyrotrophs and they stimulate the thyrotrophs to release the TSH, which will act on the target tissue, that is the thyroid gland, and the thyroid gland will release the thyroid hormone. Similarly, corticotropin releasing hormone that will be released from the hypothalamus, it will stimulate the corticotrophs to release the ACTH, which will act on the target organ adrenal cortex, from where the cortisol will be released. So this is the hypothalamo-pituitary thyroid axis. So it will be the hypothalamo-pituitary adrenal axis. Then there is release of gonadotropin releasing hormone that will stimulate the cell from anterior pituitary to release the LH and FSH, which will act on the male and female gonads, and there will be release of androgen and estrogen. So this axis is your hypothalamo-pituitary gonadal axis. Okay, similarly, there will be release of growth hormone releasing hormone. This will stimulate the somatotrophs to release the growth hormone, which will act in the peripheral target tissue and do its function. But most interestingly, so there will be release of one factor, that is the dopamine from the pituitary. This dopamine will actually act on the lactotrophs and it is inhibitory to the secretion of prolactin. So almost all releasing hormones, they are stimulatory. Only for prolactin, the factor that is released from the pituitary, it is the inhibitory factor. That chemically this is dopamine. So this is in a nutshell the axis, hypothalamo-pituitary and the target organ axis. And when learn the regulation of these hormones, we will find so they are acting in a negative feedback pathway. Now come to the structure of the hormones. So the hormones that are released from the anterior pituitary, we know that they may be the TSH, LH or the FSH. These are the hormones that are released. So TSH, LH and FSH, these hormones are the glycoprotein hormones. So all of these glycoprotein hormones, they have two subunits. Among them, the alpha subunit is common. Only by the beta subunit we can differentiate between the TSH, LH and FSH. In our video of the placental hormone, we have seen the human chorionic gonadotrophin or HCG is also a glycoprotein. And the alpha subunit of HCG is also similar with LH, FSH and TSH. Now we will concentrate on the growth hormone, which is released from the somatotrophs of anterior pituitary. When we will try to read about any hormone, so we can read it under certain headings. First is the chemistry and the biosynthesis of the hormone, then the metabolism of the hormone, secretion of the hormone, functions and actions, mechanism of actions, and the diseases, that is hypo and hyper secretion of the hormones. So these 5 or 6 points, if we read in every hormone, it will be easier for us to remember the hormone. So now we are going to learn the growth hormone under these headings. First, the structure and the biosynthesis of growth hormone, how it is metabolized, how it is secreted, what are the mechanism of action, and what is the function of growth hormone, and conditions when the growth hormone secretion is increased or decreased. So growth hormone, it is a single chain polypeptide hormone. So it is not a glycoprotein, it is a polypeptide hormone and it contains 191 amino acid. The average molecular weight is 21,500 Dalton. So actually there are two forms of growth hormone. One form has a molecular weight of 22,000, that constitutes 90%. Another form has a molecular weight of 20,000. So we take the average molecular weight, that is around 21,500. Now, so this is the structure of the growth hormone, three-dimensional. Now, how it is synthesized? Like all peptide hormones, this growth hormone, it is synthesized in the pre-pro form. We can see that it is secreted in the pre-pro hormone at the rough endoplasmic reticulum. So after that, after cleavage, it will form the pro hormone and at the Golgi apparatus. After that, the active form of the hormone will be formed and will remain stored in the secretory granules. So every peptide hormones, they follow this order. So first is the pre-pro, then the pro, then the active form stored in the secretory granules. So this is, we can see more in detail. So the mRNA in the ribosome, they are actually forming the pre-pro hormone. Actually this pre-pro hormone, they contains a signal sequence. So the enzymes in the endoplasmic reticulum, they chop the signal sequence. So that's how the signal sequence, it is coming out and it is forming the pro hormone. Now the pro hormone, it passes from the endoplasmic reticulum through the Golgi complex. Now secretory, they will enter into the secretory vesicle. The secretory vesicles containing enzymes and pro hormone, they actually cut off the inactive part of the hormone and forms the active hormone, which will remain stored in the secretory granule. And whenever needed, it will undergo exocytosis and it will be released into the circulation. So growth hormone, we can see that growth hormone, it can bind with, in most of the situation, it bind with the growth hormone binding protein. A portion of circulating growth hormone, it is bound to a plasma protein that is large fragment of the extracellular domain of the growth receptor. About 50% of the growth hormone is bound to this protein and it provides a reservoir. Growth hormone is metabolized rapidly at liver. The half-life of growth hormone is 6 to 20 minutes. Normally in adult, less than 3 nanogram per ml of growth hormone is excreted unaltered in urine. Daily urine output of growth hormone reflex is 24 hours. So now that is how the secretion is regulated via hypothalamus. We can say that, so there are some secretory cells located in the hypothalamus which are the arcuate nucleus. From the arcuate nucleus, there will be release of growth hormone releasing hormone. So this is the GHRH that is released. So through the hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal circulation, it will come to the anterior pituitary and it will stimulate the somatotrophs. How they are going to stimulate? So this GHRH will bind with this receptor. This is a G protein coupled receptor coupled with the adenyl cyclase that will enhance the CAMP and that will increase the protein kinase A level. So intracellular calcium concentration will be more, which will enhance the exocytosis of the growth hormone. So what are the factors that stimulate the hypothalamus arcuate nucleus to secrete more GHRH? So these are the factors: decrease in blood sugar, decrease in blood free fatty acid, increased blood amino acid, arginine like amino acid, starvation, protein deficiency, trauma, stress, GHRH, exercise, excitement, testosterone, estrogen, ghrelin, deep sleep, all are the factors that stimulate growth hormone. Inhibitory factors: if the person is in a fed state, that is blood sugar level is high, blood free fatty acid is high, obesity, then aging, then exogenous growth hormone, somatostatins, somatomedins, they give a negative action and inhibit the secretion of growth hormone. Another important factor, so this somatostatin, that is also released from the hypothalamus at this periventricular region. Cells in the periventricular region, they release the somatostatin. Similarly, by hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system, they will come to the anterior pituitary, and unlike GHRH, they prevent or inhibit the somatotrophs and prevent the release of growth hormone. So now how this somatostatin they acts? So somatostatin will also bind with this receptor, that is also G protein couple, but that is not G stimulatory protein, that is G inhibitory. So it will prevent the formation of CAMP, that's why there will be prevention of release of growth hormone. So this is in a nutshell the regulation of secretion of growth hormone. We can say that from the hypothalamus, growth hormone releasing hormone is released. It is stimulating the somatotrophs of the anterior pituitary to release growth hormone. Growth hormone, when it is released into the circulation, it will go to the target organ and it will help in the release of some other chemical factors and also do its function. Now this regulation, it actually happens in the negative feedback pathway. We will see that this growth hormone, when it is released, it is giving a stimulation to the somatostatin. When this somatomedins or insulin-like growth factor that is released from the liver with the influence of growth hormone, that is also stimulating the somatostatin. And we all know the function of the somatostatin. It will inhibit the anterior pituitary and prevent the release of growth hormone. In addition to that, the somatomedins or insulin-like growth factor, they also inhibit the anterior pituitary to release the growth hormone. So the regulation of the secretion of growth hormone is by negative feedback mechanism. Another important factor, recently it has been discovered, a new growth hormone releasing factor that is secreted, we know that it is secreted here. So it has got a positive action that is known as ghrelin, that is giving a positive action both on the hypothalamus and the pituitary and enhances the release of growth hormone. Now when the growth hormone it is released in the circulation and it has reached its target organ, what is the mechanism of action of growth hormone? So we have covered the structure and the synthesis of the growth hormone, and now we are coming to the mechanism of action of growth hormone. So growth hormone will actually bind with this receptor. This growth hormone receptor is a membrane polypeptide that contains 620 amino acids. It has got a large extracellular portion, one transmembrane portion, and the large cytoplasmic domain. So this receptor it neither resemble any of the G protein coupled receptor, nor it is similar to the receptors with intrinsic tyrosine kinase activity like insulin. Rather, it is a tyrosine kinase associated receptor that belongs to the member of cytokine receptor superfamily. So this receptor has 3 domains and it has got 2 subunits. So when growth hormone binds to one subunit of this receptor, so suppose it binds with this subunit of the receptor, the binding site on other subunit is attracted and subunits come close to each other. So this part will be attracted and these two subunits will come close together and they will form homodimer of growth hormone receptor. This dimerization is essential component of receptor activation. So when this dimerization happens, it will initiate the activation of innumerable enzymatic cascades within the cell. So within the cell, there will be stimulation of mainly 4 signaling pathways. One is the JAK-STAT pathway, second is the SHC-GRB pathway, third is the tyrosine kinase IRS pathway, and fourth is the phospholipase C pathway. Now let's see how these pathways are acting. So this picture gives an idea about 4 signaling pathways of growth hormone. So first come to the JAK-STAT signaling pathway. So we can see here the JAK2. So JAK2 is the member of the family of cytoplasmic tyrosine kinase. It is known as Janus kinase. It is associated with but not an integral part of growth hormone receptor. So this is a growth hormone receptor. JAK2 is associated with this receptor. Now STAT is the signal transducer that activates the transcriptor. So STAT is the transcriptor protein. It is a signal transducer that activates the transcription. Now when the growth hormone binds with the growth hormone receptor, there will be activation of cytoplasmic domain of it, which induces the JAK kinase, and there will be phosphorylation of this STAT. Now this phosphorylated STAT, it will migrate to the nucleus and it will induce various genes that mediate the hormone action. So this is the function of JAK-STAT pathway. Now come to the second pathway, that is the SHC-GRB2 pathway. Here again the JAK2 actually causes the phosphorylation of protein SHC. So that will activate the GRB2, and GRB2 protein stimulates the MAP kinase, and this MAP kinase induces various gene transcription. Now the third pathway is the tyrosine kinase and JAK tyrosine kinase and insulin receptor substrate pathway or IRS pathway. So activation of JAK tyrosine kinase causes phosphorylation of IRS, which in turn induces various intracellular enzymes. Now the fourth pathway is the phospholipase C pathway. So hormone receptor complex. So this hormone receptor complex, it stimulates the membrane enzyme phospholipase C, which results in production of diacylglycerol or DAG, that ultimately stimulates or initiates the entry of calcium intracellularly, and it also initiates so many gene transcription. Now the physiological actions of growth hormone. Growth hormone is an anabolic hormone with profound short-term metabolic effects and long-term growth promoting effects. So a major function of the growth hormone is on the growth as well as on the metabolism. Some of these functions it is mediated directly, some it is mediated indirectly via insulin-like growth hormone that is secreted from liver. So some direct functions we will see: the epiphyseal growth of the bone that helps in the linear growth of the bone, in the skeletal muscle, protein synthesis, in the metabolism, reduced glucose uptake and the lipolysis, and the decreased insulin sensitivity. These are some direct actions. Whereas indirectly it will also stimulate the epiphyseal growth, visceral growth, and the insulin-like activity and some metabolic functions. So first come to the epiphyseal growth or the linear growth of the bone. The most striking and specific effect of growth hormone is the stimulation of linear growth, which occurs due to its action on the epiphyseal cartilage of long bones. So we can see this is the epiphyseal cartilage of the long bones. So this is a growth plate, we can say this is a growth plate. So if there is proliferation of this area, that means length of the bone will be increased. Now growth hormone stimulates all aspects of metabolism of chondrocytes, that is the cartilage forming cells. And the major actions of growth hormone on chondrocytes are incorporation of proline into collagen and its conversion into hydroxyproline, incorporation of sulfate into proteoglycan chondroitin. Now this hydroxyproline and the chondroitin, they will join to form the extracellular matrix. Now increased amino acid uptake, protein synthesis, mRNA, DNA synthesis in the chondrocytes, increase in number and size of the chondrocyte, and action on stem cell, that is known as prochondrocytes, and converts them to chondrocytes. So all of them, they will help the differentiation of the chondrocytes and growth of the epiphyseal cartilage that increases the length of the bone, consequently promotes the linear growth of the body. Thus growth hormone increases the height of the individual before closure of epiphysis. Now some other activities on bone is that growth hormone stimulates the bone remodeling. So it will actually activate the osteoblastic cell and help in the deposition of calcium. Bone density, bone mineral density will be increased. Now other than activity on the bone, we know that it will activate the skeletal muscle. So growth hormone increases the growth of the skeletal muscle by increasing the protein synthesis. It also enhances the growth of different visceral organs. What are those organs? It may be the liver, kidney, pancreas, and intestine. So there will be increased protein synthesis, increased RNA and DNA synthesis, increased cell size and number. Now in a nutshell we can say that, so growth hormone, so these are the target organs of growth hormone. So in the adipose tissue, what they will do, they will reduce the glucose uptake and increase the lipolysis. In the liver, so one function is insulin-like growth factor 1 will be released. Another function is they will increase the gluconeogenesis and glycosenolysis. In the kidney, they will also enhance the gluconeogenesis. And in the skeletal muscle, they will reduce the glucose uptake and increase the glycosenolysis. So one point is clear from here, that they will actually enhance the blood glucose level. So they will actually enhance. So that's why the growth hormone is also known as the pro-diabetic hormone. So all of this glucose uptake, if it is less, more glycogen will be converted to glucose. From other substrates, there will be formation of glucose. So ultimately the blood level of glucose will be increased. Another important thing is, as there is lipolysis, so free fatty acid level will be increased. That will contribute to the insulin resistance. So ultimately, as the glucose production and blood level of glucose is increased and the functions of insulin is prevented, so as a result of that, there will be hyperglycemia. Now, effects on protein metabolism, it is seen that it is anabolic. So positive nitrogen and phosphorus balance, increased amino acid entry, RNA and DNA synthesis, protein synthesis, this will happen with the help of growth hormone. Now it also affects the mineral metabolism. So it increases the calcium absorption from GIT. It decreases the calcium, potassium and sodium phosphorus excretion. So salt retention is there, because these minerals are diverted from kidney to the growing tissues. Now come to the insulin-like growth factors. So we have seen that there are certain indirect effects of growth hormone. So growth hormone induces the liver to release IGF-1. So this will cause some effects on the target tissues. So the effect of growth hormone on growth, cartilage and protein metabolism depend on an interaction between this growth hormone and somatomedins. Now the principal circulating somatomedins in human body are two types. One is the insulin-like growth factor 1 and insulin-like growth factor 2. These factors, as the name implies, they have a structural similarity with insulin. We can see that it has got the A chain, and B chain like insulin, but the difference is that they have the C chain. In case of insulin, they don't have the C chain, but here they retain the C chain. Another important difference is that they have an extension of A chain that is called the D domain. So this is the extension of A chain that is known as the D domain. Now when these insulin-like growth factor, they are released in the circulation, they will readily bind with some binding proteins. So there are up till now 6 IGF binding proteins have been discovered. Among them, IGF or binding protein 3 is the major protein, constitutes 95% of the binding protein in the circulation. Now IGF-1 receptor, when it binds with the target tissue, is very similar to insulin receptor and probably uses similar or identical intracellular signaling pathways. Now here is the comparison between the insulin and the insulin-like growth factor 1 and growth factor 2. So we can see that the insulin-like growth factor 1 is also known as the somatomedin C, and here it is 2 is known as multiplication stimulating activity MSA. So number of amino acid, IGF-1 is 70. We all know insulin contains 51 amino acids, and for IGF-2 it is 67. Insulin is secreted from the pancreatic B cell, beta cells of islets of Langerhans. IGF-1 is secreted from liver and other tissues, and IGF-2 from diverse tissues. So their level is regulated by the glucose. But here there is an interesting fact that before birth, the secretion of insulin-like growth factor 1 is independent of growth hormone. but after birth it is definitely stimulated by the growth hormone. Now this is the plasma level. So plasma level of IGF-1, it peaks at puberty. Binding protein is there. Most important is binding protein type 3, and the major function of insulin is the control of metabolism. Its major function is the skeletal and cartilage growth. And regarding IGF-2, these hormones are actually related with the fetal growth. So it helps in the growth of fetus before birth, and IGF-2 is largely growth hormone independent. In adults, gene of IGF-2 is expressed only in choroid plexus and meninges. Now, so we can say, so these are the functions of the IGF-1. So which are the indirect functions of growth hormone? That it has insulin-like activity, it has anti-lipolytic activity, protein synthesis, and the epiphyseal growth. Now come to the fluctuation of growth hormone. One type of fluctuation, that is the 24 hours fluctuation of growth hormone. Another is, so this is the 24-hour fluctuation of growth hormone. We can see that growth hormone secretion, it happens in burst, and its burst is maximum during the night time or during the sleep time. The pulsatile secretion becomes more prominent in the midnight, especially within first few hours of deep sleep. Approximately 70% of total 24 hours of growth hormone secretion, it occurs during this slow wave sleep. So maximum secretion, we can see that it happens during the sleep. That's why especially in children, it is advised that they have to sleep more to attain normal growth. Those who have sleeplessness, they do not gain weight. So this is the 24-hour fluctuation of growth hormone. Now we want to know the growth hormone secretion throughout our lifetime. In different phases of our life, we will see that growth hormone secretion increases during infancy. So after birth, so gradual there is increase in the secretion, and it is maintained throughout childhood. Growth hormone secretion increases enormously during the time of puberty, and it is associated with a sudden increase in height and general growth of the body. The final height of the individual is mainly determined by their inherent growth hormone secreting capacity. Now after puberty, growth hormone secretion decreases to adult level and maintains till senescence. Growth hormone secretion is less in old age. So this is, we can say, up to senescence it is maintained, and after that in old age its concentration is less. So this is a growth hormone level at different phases of life. Now we want to see the rate of growth in boys and girls, and what is the mechanism of it, and how they are related to different hormones. So we will see that in humans, two periods of rapid growth occurs. One is occurs during the infancy, and second in the late puberty. The first period of accelerated growth is partly a continuation of the fetal growth period. The second growth spurt at the time of puberty, it is due to growth hormone androgens and estrogens. The subsequent cessation of growth is due in large part to closure of the epiphysis of the long bones by estrogen. One interesting part is that although androgen and estrogens initially they stimulate growth, estrogens ultimately terminate growth by causing the epiphysis to fuse to the long bones. That is a epiphyseal closure that is enhanced by the estrogen. Now once the epiphyses have closed, linear growth ceases. That is why patients with sexual precocity are apt to be dwarfed, because they have early secretion of estrogen and there will be closure of epiphysis. On the other hand, men who are castrated during puberty tend to be tall because their estrogen production is decreased and their epiphyses remain open, allowing some growth to continue past the normal age of puberty. After this time, after the puberty, further increase in height are not possible. Because girls mature earlier than boys, this growth spurt appears earlier in girls. Of course, in both sexes, the rate of growth of individual tissues, it varies. Now, this is a relative importance of hormones in human growth at various phases of life. We can see from here that the thyroid hormone and the growth hormone. So this is after birth, it is the age in years. So thyroid hormone and growth hormone drive the rapid growth rate in the neonatal period and for first few years of life. So neonatal and first few years of life, the growth will be mainly mediated via thyroid hormone and growth hormone. With the effect of the thyroid hormones, it will be tapering off thereafter. So, but the thyroid hormone is level will be tapered off. Now, the growth spurt now come to the pubertal time. The growth spurt during the puberty, that will be the effect, combined effect of the growth hormones and the sex steroids. Now, one important point is that thyroid hormones have widespread effects on the ossification of cartilages, the growth of teeth, contour of face, and the proportions of the body. So this proportion is very important. And hypothyroid, if you look at the dwarfism, the hypothyroid dwarf, you can see that they maintain and they have an infantile proportion. So this is a normal proportion at the 2 years. At the 8 years, you can say proportion means the ratio between the upper extremity and the lower extremity, it is maintaining the same proportion. But here this 8-year boy is also dwarf, but the proportion, it is maintained like adult type. The proportion is not infantile type. So in case of hypothyroidism, the infantile proportions will be maintained. Now come to another important term, that is the catch-up growth. So following illness or starvation in children, a period of catch-up growth takes place during which the growth rate is greater than normal. The accelerated growth usually continues until the previous growth curve is reached, then slows to normal. So here we can see that the growth curve of a normal boy who had illness beginning at the age of 5 and that ends at the age of 7. So this shaded part, it shows the actual growth of the boy, and we can see that there is a cessation of growth here, but at this age, okay, due to the catch-up growth, it has recovered and it has restored the normal height of that age. So this type of growth is the catch-up growth, and the mechanism that brings about and control catch-up growth, it is unknown. So now some conditions where the growth hormone secretion is excess or less. So acromegaly is a condition where there is increased level of growth hormone, but it happens in adults, that is after closure of epiphysis. So as the epiphyseal closure is done, so that means the linear growth of the bones, it's not possible. Instead of that, there will be growth of the skin and the soft tissues, growth of the viscera, bones of the face, hands and feet, bone density may be increased, enlargement of the jaw results in protrusion, prognathism with broadening of the lower face, hands and feet are enlarged with broad and sausage-like fingers, increased risk of colon polyps. So this is a typical acromegaly face with prognathism, and this is typical acromegaly hand that shows widening of the soft tissue. And one important feature is that acromegaly or growth hormone secretion, it mainly happens due to the pituitary tumor. So any kind of pituitary tumor, it will give rise to some kind of visual defects due to the compression of the optic chiasma. So these are some important features. There will be increased frontal bossing, there will be brow furrow, enlargement of the base of the nose, thickening of the nasolabial sulcus, thickening of the lips, parotid hypertrophy, loss of oval facial features, and worsening of prognathism. Another condition of excess secretion of growth hormone is a gigantism, where it happens in children before the epiphyseal closure. That's why the pupil can reach a height of 8 feet, and this usually results in the pituitary tumor. Otherwise, almost all features of gigantism are similar as acromegaly except the acromegaly facies. This is a picture of gigantism. Now, conditions where there will be hyposecretion of growth hormone, there may be dwarfism. The hyposecretion may be at the hypothalamus level, that is growth hormone releasing hormone deficiency, or it may be at the level of pituitary, that is a pituitary dwarf, or it may be at the level of decreased secretion of insulin-like growth factor that happens in African pygmies, or there may be decreased or unresponsive growth hormone receptor that happens in the Laron dwarfism. A pituitary dwarf or dwarfism due to growth hormone deficiency, it is characterized by short stature and correspondingly delayed bone and sexual maturation. But one important point is that mental power relatively remains normal in a pituitary dwarf, which helps in differentiating them from a thyroid dwarf in whom the mental retardation is an outstanding feature. Low level of growth hormone or IGF-1 will be seen in these type of patients, and they are mainly treated by administration of synthetic growth hormone preparations. Thank you.